Bullies torment 12-year-old for pregnancy until a doctor steps in and exposes the real story. Jasmine Hayes was a bright, imaginative 12-year-old girl living in the bustling city of Charlotte, North Carolina. She was a 7th grader at Northwood Middle School, a large, diverse school with a mix of students from various backgrounds and socioeconomic levels. Jasmine was a quiet, sensitive child with a love for reading, drawing, and spending time with her small circle of close friends. She lived with her single mother, Maria, a hard-working nurse who often worked double shifts at the local hospital to make ends meet. Their apartment was small, but cozy, filled with books, art supplies, and the comforting aroma of Maria's cooking. Jasmine's father had left when she was a baby, and she had no memories of him. Jasmine was a good student, earning mostly A's and B's. She excelled in English and art, often losing herself in the pages of a novel or spending hours sketching in her notebook. She was not particularly athletic or popular, but she had a few close friends who shared her interests and appreciated her quirky sense of humor. She was going through the awkward transition from childhood to adolescence, a time of physical and emotional changes that she didn't quite understand. She was self-conscious about her body, her changing appearance, and her place in the complex social hierarchy of middle school. Lately, she had been feeling increasingly tired and unwell. She had noticed that her clothes were becoming tighter, especially around her waist. She had also experienced some unusual swelling in her neck, but she had dismissed it as a minor ailment, nothing to worry about. She hadn't told her mother about these changes, partly because she was embarrassed, and partly because she didn't want to add to her mother's already heavy burdens. She hoped that the symptoms would go away on their own, that it was just a phase, a temporary blip in her otherwise normal life. But the changes didn't go away. They became more pronounced, more noticeable, and more difficult to ignore. And they soon attracted the unwelcome attention of her classmates, setting in motion a chain of events that would turn Jasmine's world upside down. She started to dread going to school. She was starting to feel very alone. The bullying started subtly, with whispers and snickers in the hallways, furtive glances and pointed fingers. Jasmine tried to ignore it, to pretend she didn't notice, but the taunts gradually became more overt, more cruel, more relentless. A group of girls, led by a popular and mean-spirited 8th grader named Brittany, started calling her names Fatso, Whale, and the most hurtful of all, Baby Mama. They would mimic her waddling gait, make crude jokes about her growing belly, and spread rumors about her supposed pregnancy. The boys were no better. They would make lewd comments, catcall her in the hallways, and throw things at her during lunch. They would laugh at her, point at her, and make her feel like an outcast, a freak, an object of ridicule. Jasmine's world began to shrink. She dreaded going to school, her stomach churning with anxiety every morning. She started avoiding the cafeteria, eating her lunch alone in the library or the bathroom. She stopped participating in class, afraid of drawing attention to herself. She withdrew from her friends, ashamed and embarrassed by the rumors and the taunts. The bullying took a toll on her emotional well-being. She became increasingly withdrawn, depressed, and anxious. She had difficulty sleeping, plagued by nightmares and a constant sense of dread. She lost her appetite, her grades began to slip, and she lost interest in the things she once loved, like reading and drawing. She felt utterly alone, isolated, and trapped in a nightmare from which she couldn't escape. She didn't know who to turn to, who to trust. She was afraid of telling her mother, afraid of confirming the rumors, afraid of disappointing her. She tried to talk to her friends, but they didn't understand. They couldn't comprehend the depth of her pain, the intensity of the bullying, the crushing weight of the secret she was carrying. Just ignore them, Jasmine, they would say. They're just jealous. But it wasn't that simple. The bullying had become relentless, pervasive, and deeply damaging. It was eroding her self-esteem, her sense of self-worth, and her ability to cope with the challenges of everyday life. She was drowning in a sea of shame, fear, and isolation, and she didn't know how to swim. She felt as if she was losing control. Jasmine, desperate to hide her changing body and to escape the relentless bullying, started wearing baggy clothes, oversized sweatshirts, loose-fitting pants, and anything that would conceal the growing bulge in her abdomen. She would hunch her shoulders, trying to make herself appear smaller, less noticeable. She started avoiding mirrors, unable to bear the sight of her own reflection. She hated her body, hated the changes that were happening to her, hated the way she looked. She felt like a freak, an outcast, a monster. She developed elaborate routines to avoid being seen by her classmates. She would arrive at school early, before the hallways were crowded, and she would leave late, after most of the students had gone home. She would take circuitous routes to her classes, avoiding the areas where the bullies congregated. She stopped using the school restrooms, afraid of being cornered and harassed. She would hold it all day, enduring the discomfort and the pain, rather than risk encountering the bullies. She became increasingly anxious and hypervigilant, constantly scanning her surroundings, looking for potential threats, anticipating the next taunt, the next insult, the next physical assault. She lived in a state of perpetual fear, her body tense, her mind racing, her heart pounding. She tried to talk to her mother, to hint at the bullying, but she couldn't bring herself to reveal the full extent of her suffering. She was afraid of her mother's reaction, afraid of confirming the rumors, afraid of disappointing her. "School's okay," she would say, forcing a smile. "Just a lot of homework." Maria, exhausted from her long hours at work, didn't notice the subtle changes in her daughter's behavior, the growing sadness in her eyes, the way she flinched at sudden movements. She was too preoccupied with her own struggles, with paying the bills, with keeping their lives afloat. Jasmine's silence, her attempts to cope with the bullying on her own, only made things worse. The bullies, sensing her fear and her isolation, became even more emboldened. The taunts became more vicious, the physical assaults more frequent. She started having panic attacks, sudden episodes of overwhelming fear and anxiety that left her breathless, trembling, and unable to function. She would hide in the bathroom, her heart pounding, her body shaking, waiting for the panic to subside. She was trapped in a cycle of fear, shame, and isolation, with no way out. She felt like she was disappearing, fading away, losing herself in the darkness of her despair. She was desperate for help, but she didn't know where to turn. She didn't know who to trust. She started skipping more and more school. The incident that finally brought Jasmine's suffering to light occurred on a sunny Tuesday morning in the schoolyard. Jasmine, trying to avoid the crowded cafeteria, was eating her lunch alone on a bench near the playground. A group of bullies, led by Brittany, spotted her. They approached her, their faces twisted into sneers, their eyes filled with malice. "Hey, baby mama," Brittany said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Where's your boyfriend? Did he run off and leave you?" The other girls laughed, their taunts echoing across the schoolyard. Jasmine ignored them, trying to focus on her lunch, trying to pretend she didn't hear them. But the bullies were relentless. "Look at her belly," one of the girls said. "She's going to pop any day now." "I bet it's twins," another girl said, giggling. Brittany reached out and poked Jasmine's abdomen, hard. Jasmine winced in pain, her eyes filling with tears. "Leave me alone," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "What was that, baby mama?" Brittany said, leaning closer. "Can't you speak up?" She poked Jasmine again, harder this time. Jasmine cried out in pain, clutching her stomach. Suddenly, everything went black. Jasmine fainted, collapsing onto the ground, her body limp and unresponsive. The bullies, initially shocked by Jasmine's sudden collapse, quickly scattered, fearing the consequences of their actions. A few students, witnessing the scene from a distance, rushed to Jasmine's side, trying to help her. One of the teachers, Mr. Evans, who was on yard duty, saw the commotion and ran over to investigate. He found Jasmine lying on the ground, unconscious, her face pale and ashen. He immediately called for the school nurse and for an ambulance. The schoolyard, moments before filled with the sounds of children playing, was now silent, the students watching in stunned disbelief as the adults tended to Jasmine. Mrs. Peterson, the school nurse, arrived within minutes, her face etched with concern. She checked Jasmine's pulse, her breathing, and her pupils. She recognized the signs of a serious medical condition. "She needs to go to the hospital immediately," she said, her voice urgent. "Something's terribly wrong." The paramedics arrived, their sirens wailing, their movements swift and efficient. They loaded Jasmine onto a stretcher, attached monitors, and started N4. The students watched in silence, their faces filled with a mixture of fear, guilt, and morbid curiosity. The bullies, including Brittany, stood at a distance, their expressions subdued, their bravado gone. They had gone too far. As the ambulance sped away, its sirens screaming, a profound sense of unease settled over the schoolyard. The laughter and games had ceased, replaced by a somber silence. Everyone knew that something terrible had happened, that a classmate was in serious trouble. And some of them, the bullies, knew that they were partly to blame. They started to feel very afraid. The initial examination at the hospital was a whirlwind of activity, with doctors and nurses rushing around Jasmine, their faces grim, their voices urgent. Dr. Ramirez, the same doctor who had seen Mia in the earlier story, was the attending physician on duty. He quickly assessed Jasmine's condition, noting her pale complexion, her rapid pulse, her shallow breathing, and her distended abdomen. He ordered a series of tests, including blood work, an ultrasound, and a CT scan. He questioned the school nurse, Mrs. Peterson, who had accompanied Jasmine to the hospital. Mrs. Peterson, still clinging to her initial assumption, explained her suspicion that Jasmine was pregnant and that the fainting episode might be related to complications from the pregnancy. Dr. Ramirez listened patiently, but he was skeptical. He had seen pregnant teenagers before, and Jasmine didn't fit the typical profile. She was too young, too thin, and her symptoms didn't quite align with a normal pregnancy. He examined Jasmine's abdomen, palpating the area carefully. He felt a large, firm mass, extending from her pelvis to her ribcage. It was not the soft, rounded shape of a pregnant uterus. It was something else, something far more concerning. The ultrasound images confirmed his suspicions. There was no fetus, no sign of a pregnancy. Instead, there was a massive, complex mess occupying most of Jasmine's abdominal cavity. It was pushing on her other organs, compressing her lungs, and causing her severe pain. "This isn't a pregnancy," Dr. Ramirez said, his voice grave. "This is something else entirely. We need to get a CT scan to get a better look." The CT scan revealed the truth. Jasmine had a large tumor, originating from her thyroid gland and extending down into her abdomen. The tumor was pressing on her other organs, causing her pain, her fatigue, and her distended belly. It was also affecting her hormone levels, which explained some of the physical changes she had been experiencing. Dr. Ramirez knew that this was a serious situation, a potentially life-threatening condition. He needed to consult with a specialist, a pediatric endocrinologist, to determine the best course of action. He also needed to inform Jasmine's mother, who had arrived at the hospital, frantic with worry. He dreaded having to deliver this news, to shatter the family's world with a diagnosis that was both shocking and terrifying. He knew the road would be challenging. He took a deep breath and went to meet with the mother. Dr. Ramirez found Maria, Jasmine's mother, pacing anxiously in the waiting room. She was a whirlwind of nervous energy, her eyes darting around the room, her hands clutching a crumpled tissue. "Mrs. Hayes," Dr. Ramirez said, approaching her gently. "I'm Dr. Ramirez. I've been examining your daughter." Maria looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. "How is she?" she asked, her voice trembling. Is she going to be okay?" "We have a diagnosis," Dr. Ramirez said, choosing his words carefully. "But it's not what we initially suspected. Jasmine is not pregnant." Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her, so intense that her knees almost buckled. "Not pregnant," she repeated. "Thank God. But what's wrong with her? Why did she faint?" "Jasmine has a large tumor," Dr. Ramirez explained. "It's originating from her thyroid gland, and it's extending down into her abdomen. It's pressing on her other organs, causing her pain and other symptoms." Maria stared at him, her mind struggling to process the information. "A tumor," she said. "But how? She's so young." Dr. Ramirez explained that while thyroid tumors were relatively rare in children, they did occur. He explained that the tumor was likely causing hormonal imbalances, which could explain Jasmine's fatigue, weight gain, and other physical changes. He also explained that the tumor was potentially life-threatening, that it needed to be removed surgically as soon as possible. Maria, overwhelmed by the news, began to cry. She felt a mixture of relief that Jasmine wasn't pregnant, fear for her daughter's health, and guilt for not realizing something was seriously wrong sooner. "I should have known," she sobbed. "I should have taken her to the doctor sooner. I thought she was just going through puberty." Dr. Ramirez placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You couldn't have known, Mrs. Hayes," he said. "These tumors can be difficult to detect, especially in the early stages. The important thing is that we've found it now, and we're going to do everything we can to help Jasmine." He explained the next steps. Jasmine would be admitted to the hospital. She would undergo further tests to determine the exact nature of the tumor, and she would be scheduled for surgery as soon as possible. Maria, clinging to Dr. Ramirez's words, nodded her understanding. She felt a surge of gratitude for the doctor's compassion and his expertise. She also felt a renewed determination to be strong for her daughter, to support her through this difficult journey. She asked to see Jasmine, and Dr. Ramirez led her to the pediatric ward, where Jasmine was lying in a bed, hooked up to monitors and 4 lines. She looked small and fragile, but her eyes were open, and she managed a weak smile when she saw her mother. Maria rushed to her daughter's side, embracing her gently, tears streaming down her face. "Oh, baby," she said. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, I didn't know." Jasmine, her voice hoarse, whispered, "It's okay, Mommy. It's okay." They held each other, their love a bond that could not be broken, their fear a shared burden that they would face together. The diagnosis had changed everything, but it had also brought them closer, strengthening their resolve to fight for Jasmine's health and her future. The truth had been revealed, and now the healing could begin. The school nurse was informed. She was shocked. Dr. Ramirez, along with Dr. Chen, the pediatric endocrinologist who had been consulted on Jasmine's case, sat down with Maria and Jasmine to explain the medical situation in detail. They used simple, non-technical language, ensuring that both mother and daughter understood the diagnosis, the treatment plan, and the potential risks and benefits. "Jasmine has a condition called a thyroid goiter," Dr. Chen explained. "It's an abnormal enlargement of the thyroid gland, which is located in the neck. In Jasmine's case, the goiter has grown into a large tumor, extending down into her chest and abdomen." He showed them the images from the CT scan, pointing out the location and size of the tumor. It was a massive growth, occupying a significant portion of Jasmine's chest and abdominal cavity, pressing on her lungs, her stomach, and other vital organs. "The good news," Dr. Chen continued, "is that most thyroid tumors, even large ones, are benign, meaning they are not cancerous. However, they can still cause serious problems because of their size and location. They can interfere with breathing, swallowing, and digestion. They can also affect hormone production, which can lead to a variety of other symptoms." He explained that Jasmine's tumor was likely causing an overproduction of thyroid hormone, a condition called hyperthyroidism. This explained her fatigue. Her weight changes the appearance of a bump, which was actually the distended abdomen from the tumor's size and pressure, and some of her other symptoms. "The treatment for this condition is surgery," Dr. Chen said. "We need to remove the tumor, or at least a significant portion of it, to relieve the pressure on her organs and to restore normal thyroid function." He explained that the surgery would be complex and challenging, given the size and location of the tumor. There were risks involved, including bleeding, infection, damage to surrounding organs, and potential complications from anesthesia. But he also emphasized that the surgery was necessary to save Jasmine's life. "Without surgery," he said, "the tumor will continue to grow, causing more and more problems. It could eventually become life-threatening." Maria, her face pale with fear, asked about the chances of success. "The prognosis is generally good," Dr. Chen reassured her. "Most patients with this type of tumor, even large ones, recover well after surgery. But it's important to understand that this is a major operation, and there will be a period of recovery and rehabilitation." Jasmine, listening intently to the doctor's explanation, felt a mixture of fear and relief. She was scared of the surgery, of the pain, of the unknown. But she was also relieved to finally have a diagnosis, to know that she wasn't pregnant, and to have a plan of action to address her condition. She looked at her mother, her eyes filled with a silent plea for reassurance. Maria squeezed her hand, her own tears flowing freely. "We're going to get through this, baby," she said, her voice trembling. We're going to fight this together. You're strong, Jasmine. You're a fighter. Jasmine nodded, drawing strength from her mother's words, from the love and support that surrounded her. She was still scared, but she was also determined. She would face this challenge, she would undergo the surgery, and she would recover. She had to. For herself, for her mother, and for her future. She trusted the doctors. They had saved her. The news of Jasmine's true condition spread quickly through Northwood Middle School, carried by whispers, text messages, and social media posts. The initial shock and disbelief gave way to a wave of shame, guilt, and remorse, particularly among the students who had bullied Jasmine. The bullies, led by Brittany, were stunned into silence. They had tormented Jasmine, ridiculed her, and spread vicious rumors about her, all based on a false assumption. They had caused her immense pain and suffering, and now they had to face the consequences of their actions. Brittany, in particular, was devastated. She had been the ringleader, the instigator of much of the bullying. She had enjoyed the power, the attention, and the sense of belonging that came with being part of the popular crowd. But now, she realized the devastating impact of her cruelty. She had never intended to cause Jasmine any real harm, she told herself. She had just been going along with the crowd, trying to fit in, trying to be cool. But her actions had had real consequences, and she couldn't escape the guilt that now consumed her. The other bullies, too, felt a mixture of shame, guilt, and fear. They had participated in the taunting, the name-calling, the spreading of rumors. They had been complicit in Jasmine's suffering, and now they had to confront their own culpability. The teachers and administrators at Northwood Middle School were also deeply affected by the news. They felt a sense of responsibility, a sense of failure. They had not protected Jasmine, they had not intervened effectively to stop the bullying, and they had allowed a vulnerable student to suffer in silence. Principal Thompson, no relation to characters in previous stories, a man who had always prided himself on maintaining a safe and supportive school environment, was particularly shaken. He had known about the rumors, the whispers, the occasional reports of bullying, but he had dismissed them as typical teenage drama, nothing serious. He had failed to see the signs, to listen to the concerns of the few students who had tried to speak up for Jasmine. He had allowed a culture of cruelty to fester, and he had failed to protect one of his most vulnerable students. He called an emergency staff meeting, his voice filled with remorse and determination. "We have failed Jasmine Hayes," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "We have allowed bullying to go unchecked, and we have failed to provide her with the support and protection she needed. This is unacceptable. We must do better." He announced a series of new initiatives, including a comprehensive anti-bullying program, increased training for teachers and staff on recognizing and responding to bullying, and a renewed commitment to creating a school culture of empathy, respect, and inclusion. He also announced that there would be consequences for the students who had bullied Jasmine, consequences that would reflect the severity of their actions. The school community, shaken by the events, rallied around Jasmine. Students organized a fundraiser to help with her medical expenses. They sent cards, flowers, and messages of support. They created posters and banners, expressing their solidarity with Jasmine and their condemnation of bullying. The atmosphere at Northwood Middle School shifted dramatically. The whispers and snickers were replaced by expressions of concern and remorse. The bullies, once so confident and cruel, now walked the hallways with their heads down, ashamed and afraid. The silence had been broken, the truth had been revealed, and the healing could begin. But the scars of the bullying, like the scars of Jasmine's surgery, would take time to fade. The events were a wake-up call. Jasmine's surgery was a long and complex procedure, lasting several hours. The surgical team, led by Dr. Chen and a renowned pediatric surgeon, worked meticulously to remove the massive thyroid tumor, carefully navigating around vital organs and blood vessels. David and Sarah waited anxiously in the surgical waiting room, their nerves frayed, their bodies exhausted. They were joined by Nana Grace, who provided a constant source of strength and comfort. Ethan, too, was there, his teenage bravado replaced by a genuine concern for his little sister. The hours crawled by, each minute feeling like an eternity. They prayed, they paced, they tried to distract themselves with conversation, but their minds were consumed by thoughts of Jasmine, lying on the operating table, her life in the hands of the surgeons. Finally, Dr. Chen emerged from the operating room, his face weary but relieved. The surgery was successful, he said. We were able to remove the entire tumor. Jasmine is in recovery, and she's doing well. David and Sarah embraced each other, tears of relief streaming down their faces. They thanked Dr. Chen profusely, their hearts overflowing with gratitude. They were allowed to see Jasmine briefly in the recovery room. She was still groggy from the anesthesia, but she managed a weak smile when she saw her parents. "Mommy, Daddy," she whispered. "Did they get it out?" "Yes, baby," Sarah said, stroking her daughter's hair. "They got it all out. You're going to be okay." Jasmine closed her eyes, a sense of peace washing over her. The pain was still there, but it was a different kind of pain, a pain that signaled healing, pain that meant she was going to live. Jasmine's recovery was gradual but steady. She spent a week in the hospital, undergoing further tests, receiving pain medication, and gradually regaining her strength. She had a large scar on her neck and chest, a permanent reminder of the ordeal she had endured, but she also had a newfound sense of resilience, a determination to overcome her challenges. She received an outpouring of support from her family, her friends, and the community. Cards, flowers, and gifts flooded her hospital room. Her classmates sent her messages of encouragement, expressing their remorse for the way they had treated her. Even Brittany, the ringleader of the bullies, sent Jasmine a handwritten apology, expressing her deep regret for her actions and asking for forgiveness. Jasmine, while still hurt and angry, eventually decided to forgive Brittany, recognizing that she, too, was a child, capable of making mistakes and capable of learning from them. Jasmine's return to school was met with a mixture of apprehension and excitement. She was nervous about facing her classmates, about the whispers and stares, but she was also determined to reclaim her life, to not let the bullies win. The school administration, under Principal Thompson's leadership, had taken steps to ensure Jasmine's safety and well-being. The bullies had been disciplined, some suspended, others expelled. The school had implemented a zero-tolerance policy for bullying, and teachers and staff had been trained to recognize and respond to signs of harassment and abuse. Jasmine was welcomed back with open arms by her true friends, who had stood by her throughout the ordeal. They rallied around her, offering their support, their friendship, and their unwavering belief in her strength. She still faced challenges, moments of doubt, and lingering anxieties. But she was no longer alone. She had a support system, a network of caring adults and friends who were committed to helping her heal and to thrive. She had survived a terrifying ordeal, and she had emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever to live her life to the fullest. She started to get involved in school activities again. She was on the road to a full recovery. The bullying that Jasmine endured had left deep emotional scars, and Principal Thompson was determined to address the issue head-on, not just for Jasmine's sake, but for the entire school community. He organized a series of school-wide assemblies, inviting speakers to talk about the devastating effects of bullying, the importance of empathy and respect, and the need for students to stand up for themselves and for others. He implemented a peer mediation program, training students to resolve conflicts peacefully and to intervene when they witnessed bullying. He created a safe space in the school library where students could go if they were feeling threatened, harassed, or simply needed someone to talk to. He also met individually with the students who had bullied Jasmine, including Brittany. He listened to their stories, tried to understand their motivations, and explained the consequences of their actions. He didn't excuse their behavior, but he also recognized that they were children, capable of making mistakes and capable of learning from them. He emphasized the importance of empathy, of putting themselves in Jasmine's shoes, of understanding the pain they had caused. Some of the bullies were genuinely remorseful, expressing their regret for their actions and apologizing to Jasmine. Others were more resistant, clinging to their justifications and minimizing their role in the bullying. Brittany, initially defiant and defensive, eventually broke down in tears. She admitted that she had been driven by a desire for popularity, a need to fit in with the cool crowd. She had never intended to hurt Jasmine so deeply, and she was horrified by the consequences of her actions. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Thompson," she sobbed. "I was so stupid. I was so mean. I didn't think. Principal Thompson, while not excusing Brittany's behavior, offered her a path to redemption. He assigned her community service, requiring her to volunteer at a local organization that supported victims of bullying. He also encouraged her to apologize to Jasmine directly, to take responsibility for her actions, and to make amends for the harm she had caused. The school also reached out to Jasmine's mother, offering counseling services and support. They recognized that Maria, too, was a victim, a mother who had been struggling to cope with her own challenges and who had inadvertently overlooked the signs of her daughter's suffering. The school's response was comprehensive and multifaceted, addressing the immediate needs of Jasmine and her family, while also implementing long-term changes to prevent future incidents of bullying. It was a learning experience for everyone involved, a stark reminder of the importance of vigilance, empathy, and proactive intervention. The culture of the school began to shift, slowly but surely. Students became more aware of the impact of their words and actions, more willing to stand up for each other, and more likely to report incidents of bullying. Jasmine, while still bearing the emotional scars of her ordeal, began to heal. She found strength in the support of her family, her friends, and the school community. She realized that she was not alone, that she was surrounded by people who cared about her, who believed in her, and who were committed to helping her overcome her trauma. She started to speak out about her experience. Years passed, and the story of Jasmine Hayes became a powerful reminder of the devastating consequences of bullying and the importance of empathy, understanding, and early intervention. Jasmine, having recovered from her surgery and the emotional trauma she had endured, blossomed into a confident and resilient young woman. She graduated from high school with honors and went on to attend college, where she majored in psychology, determined to help others who had experienced trauma. She became an advocate for anti-bullying initiatives, sharing her story with schools, community groups, and national organizations. She spoke eloquently about the pain of being bullied, the importance of speaking up, and the power of forgiveness and healing. She also became an advocate for increased awareness of thyroid disorders in children, emphasizing the need for early diagnosis and treatment. She shared her medical journey, educating others about the symptoms, the risks, and the importance of regular checkups. She remained close to her mother, Maria, their bond strengthened by the shared ordeal they had endured. Maria, having learned a painful lesson about the importance of paying attention to her children's needs, became a more attentive and supportive parent. Principal Thompson, forever changed by his experience with Jasmine, continued to lead Northwood Middle School with a renewed commitment to student well-being. He implemented numerous programs and initiatives to create a safer, more inclusive, and more supportive school environment. He became a mentor to other principals, sharing his insights and advocating for systemic changes in the way schools addressed bullying and mental health issues. The bullies, who had once tormented Jasmine, went their separate ways. Some of them, like Brittany, learned from their mistakes and made amends for their actions. Others continued down a path of negativity and cruelty, their lives marked by a lack of empathy and a failure to understand the consequences of their choices. The town of Charlotte, shaken by Jasmine's story, rallied around her and her family. The community became more aware of the prevalence of bullying and the importance of creating a culture of kindness, respect, and inclusion. Jasmine's story served as a powerful reminder that even in the face of adversity, hope can prevail, healing is possible, and forgiveness can pave the way for a brighter future. It was a story of resilience, of courage, and of the transformative power of human connection. It was a story that taught valuable lessons about the importance of listening to children, of believing them, of protecting them, and of empowering them to overcome even the most daunting of challenges. And it was a story of how one person's suffering can be a catalyst for meaningful change, inspiring others to act with compassion, to speak out against injustice, and to create a better world for all. Jasmine's legacy was one of hope.